So for your retail investor, any investor really, to know that this metal has got legs as precious and huge legs because of the hydrogen economy, undervalued right now, and some heavy short-term demand growth, it's quite a nice recipe. So I share your view on being bullish, but of course I would say that, wouldn't I?
Hello, this is James Anderson on behalf of SD Bullion. Today we're excited to be speaking with Mr. Trevor Raymond of the World Platinum Investment Council about the long-term investment case for platinum bullion. Trevor, thanks so much for being on.
James, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So Trevor, let's start out about platinum. I'm pretty bullish on platinum myself, especially recently with the recent price dip. What specifically, or why specifically, might a long-term saver allocate a portion of their precious metals wealth into platinum?
James, a good question. And I suppose to break it down simply, there's probably three issues or three reasons why someone, particularly somebody that hasn't thought about platinum before as an investment asset, might want to allocate to platinum. I think the first is that platinum is a precious metal. It's rarer than gold. And as a precious metal, it has standing and will have value as a precious metal. And that's a good reason. Secondly, platinum is also a unique industrial metal, and it's got some unique industrial applications, and that will keep it valuable in the short, medium, and certainly long term. And then thirdly, right now, platinum is particularly undervalued. So what it does do is it provides a low risk, low cost entry point for somebody that's thinking about owning platinum as an asset class. And just to unpack those three things, firstly, as a precious metal, I mean, gold has been around 3,000 years or so. The only reason platinum hasn't been around that long is that it has a very high melting point, so it couldn't be melted until 100 years ago. It's 30 times rarer than gold, so certainly as a rare precious metal, has all the attributes. It's heavier than gold. If you hold a gold coin and a platinum coin, why wouldn't it be precious? So that precious value is likely to sustain, and just as gold is a store of value, so is platinum. And then again, it's a hard asset. It's something alternative to equities. It does provide you with something that's uncorrelated. Gold is the most uncorrelated, and the platinum price is pretty well correlated to gold. So as a precious metal, it kind of does everything that it says on the tin. As an industrial metal, I think platinum's unique applications, particularly in the hydrogen economy, certainly give it long-term value for a whole bunch of reasons. You've got a supply consideration. Supply is constrained out of one small geographic area, and there's significant demand growth in the short, medium, and long term. So those two combinations of the precious and the industrial metal right now just make it, that much more attractive. And we can explore some of those aspects as to, why it's undervalued and why the opportunity. That should give some idea.
So looking at the price action of platinum, obviously, commodities melted down basically during the pandemic when it's really kicked off in early March 2020. You had platinum spot run down towards 600, and then briefly after, more than double, touching up to 1350. Now it's pulled back a little bit. It's below 1100 as we speak today. And obviously, if you look at a really long-term chart, which I'll put into this video, if you look at platinum, as you'd mentioned, it's only been discovered in the last 120 years. We didn't have fires hot enough before then to really melt it down to understand its characteristics. The indigenous and the Spanish conquistadors, they would always think that platinum was a nuisance when they were mining for gold and silver, and they used it even to counterfeit fake gold coins in Russia because, the weighting was right. So platinum, and you mentioned how heavy it is. I mean, the fact that a 6-inch cube of platinum weighs 165 pounds gives you an idea of how dense a metal it is. It's the most dense of any of the metals, and obviously the precious metals. So there's a lot of amazing characteristics about platinum. I wanted to Let's touch on, though, what's emerging. What are the emerging use case drivers for platinum demand this decade and beyond? I know that there's fuel cell potential, especially in China. Maybe speak to that a little bit.
I think so, James. I mean, we've been around since 2014, and in the 6 years we've been doing this, we try to give investors analysis, data, insights to allow them to make more informed investment decisions. We've certainly taken platinum as an investable asset class to many more institutional investors, and certainly to a lot more retail investors, particularly in the North American region. And I suppose the interesting part about platinum is that you've had this supply and demand dynamic that is understandable because of its industrial uses. And The platinum uses are quite widespread across hundreds of industrial uses, largely into AutoCAD, cleaning your exhaust emissions, as well as jewelry and investment. And platinum's had quite a tough time, probably over the last 9 or 10 years, where the price has declined steadily. And a lot of that had to do with the Dieselgate scandal in 2015, where VW was caught cheating on emissions in vehicles in the US, and that spilled over into Europe. And platinum is used in diesel catalysis a lot more than in gasoline, mainly because a diesel engine is a low temperature engine, and sulfur poisons palladium. So what you found in the 1970s and 80s when these metals went on to vehicle catalysts is that platinum, palladium, and rhodium were all used. And then because palladium was a lot cheaper, it replaced the platinum in gasoline engines. It couldn't do that in diesel engines. So what you had with the Dieselgate scandal was that the perception was that the diesel engine was dead as a result, and the price of platinum has fallen steadily over quite a number of years, mainly for that reason. Jewelry demand declined a bit as well. The price action that you mentioned recently last year was that the fact that suddenly people were starting to recognize platinum, both for its industrial uses, as well as for its role in the hydrogen economy, but importantly, the likelihood of internal combustion engines lasting a little bit longer than popular views might have, was that there's likely to be a lot more palladium and platinum used. And then you've got this massive disconnect between the price of palladium and the price of platinum, and they are a one-to-one substitute in a gasoline engine. So just as we saw in around the year 2000, when the palladium price went over $1,000, there was a few million ounces of platinum that went back into gasoline. And we think the same thing's going on. So what you've got right now is, in terms of emerging trends, I suppose the most dominant trend in terms of demand growth, and that's something we haven't had for the past 6 years, is that you've got probably a potentially of about an extra 1.5 million ounces of demand purely from platinum substituting for palladium because of that price differential. And for maybe new investors, this is about an 8 million ounce a year market. 6 million ounces come from primary mining and 2 million ounces from recycle, mainly from auto catalysts when vehicles reach the end of their lives. So here you've got a situation where a metal that is a one-to-one substitute, one metal's trading around $1,100, the others at $2,800, has been over $3,000. So this correction is expected. It's behind the scenes. It's confidential. The automakers don't want to disclose it. But you've got the potential for an extra 1.5 million ounces over the next few years. That's a really big game changer in the short term. And then your long-term emerging is in the hydrogen economy. So platinum's used in a fuel cell to drive a fuel cell electric vehicle. And that use has got a huge demand in 10 to 15 years, maybe on this 8 million ounce market, anywhere between an additional 2 million ounces and 4 million ounces a year. So for your retail investor, any investor really, to know that this metal has got legs as precious and huge legs because of the hydrogen economy, undervalued right now, and some heavy short-term demand growth, it's quite a nice recipe. So I share your view on being bullish, but of course I would say that, wouldn't I?
Sure. But the supply side too has been constrained recently in the last few years. A lot of trouble in the mining industry in South Africa. So I assume you got a potential for high demand and a supply constraint in the decade upcoming.
Sure. So I mean, in terms of South Africa, in a strange way, South Africa is seen as a developing third world market. However, it tends to have been one of the more stable regions of Africa. And the other thing is that platinum, and in fact the platinum group metals, are just so valuable that no matter really how tough things are in a country, it would make no sense for that country not to produce them. And Zimbabwe is a great example. Zimbabwe is definitely an example. It's had a really tough political period, but there's still platinum coming out of Zimbabwe. So I don't think it's about the region or the risk. I think the important thing is that you've got these platinum mining companies, the 6 platinum group metals sit in the same rock that they mine. And if you go back 3 or 4 years, those platinum mining companies, about 60% of their revenue came from platinum and 40% came from the rest of the metals. Right now, with the incredible increase in the price of rhodium and palladium, that revenue from platinum has dropped to below 20%. And you're probably getting 40% from palladium and 40%, or near enough, from rhodium. So that's changed that mix completely. However, even though those companies have gone from losing money maybe 4 years ago to huge profitability right now, there isn't a single project underway that will materially change output in the next 3 to 4 years. So the 2 largest producers, Anglo American Platinum and Sibanye-Stillwater, both confirmed that although they're both looking at projects, They're approving projects. They're likely to approve more this year. But there's nothing that'll change the supply in the next 3 to 4 years. And that's really quite important with the demand growth that's underway.
So speaking to how very, very rare that platinum is, I mean, over the last decade or so that I've been in the precious metals industry, there's been various newsletter writers who love to brag or like to pontificate about, where platinum may go, et cetera, et cetera. And they always talk about how very, very rare it is. And sometimes they even bring up the idea that if you took all the platinum above ground in bullion form and put it into one large cube or mass, it would fit inside the average American's living room or the average American's two-car garage. And I always found this to be pretty crazy, the idea of that, because everybody's heard about the 2 Olympic-sized pools of gold. And so, for platinum to be so tiny, it kind of boggles the mind. And so one day I had a little bit of free time and went on to, down the rabbit hole to try and figure out if this was true or not. And ultimately what I came up with was an article about how much platinum there is on SD Bullion. I did my best to be as accurate as I could, citing sources that are better studied than I. But ultimately, when you crunch the numbers, the fact is that they are indeed being truthful in that claim, I thought. And the other idea was that, it would only take a few billionaires if they really, really wanted to kind of corner the market in platinum. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts about that, whether or not my research that for that one day of time was worth it, or whether I was completely off base.
No, you're certainly on base. I think maybe there's 3 useful snippets that I'll share. So the Olympic swimming pool one, we reran the numbers a few months ago just to be certain. So if you take all the gold that's ever been produced in history, it's pretty close to 4 Olympic swimming pools right now. So it was around 3 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got about 4 Olympic swimming pools filled with gold. And the same equivalent for platinum, it comes up to your ankles in one Olympic swimming pool. So that's where your 30 times rareness comes in. So it certainly is rare, and that's just, they've been mining gold for 3,000 years. You can melt it, you can produce it really easy. Platinum was just kind of hard. So, how much of it is around is one thing. Gold has a lot of metal lying around as an investment held by central banks and investors doing kind of nothing, and it's there. Platinum doesn't have that because it's an industrial metal. It's been used since the 1970s to clean vehicle exhausts and has hundreds of uses I won't bore you with over time. And to have a metal that's gone into something is unlikely to come back. The gold can come back because you can go and see it. A lot of this metal has been used up in a lot of applications that it's been used in, even though it's very highly recycled. So that's the size. The interesting one in terms of actual size is that if you look at above ground stocks, what we try to do is to say what metal is visible and what isn't. So Johnson Matthey, who's the largest producer of platinum goods and application, they've got a 30% share of global order cats. Since 1975, they've been publishing supply demand data. And to get the supply out of the mines, the disclosure is pretty good. To get the demand, a lot of hard work, but pretty close, within 100 or 200,000 ounces a year. And those supply demand balances, you can have a deficit of 100 or 300 or 400,000 ounces. And that's sort of interesting, but those always came from stocks, and the stocks weren't visible. Since 2007, we've had exchange traded funds, so you can see part of that stock. But we try and identify the above ground stocks that are readily available, that can, if there's a shortfall, they can supply, and if there's a surplus, they'll buy from that market. And our estimate is about 2.6 million ounces, and that's only 4 months of demand. And in fact, if you took the entire exchange traded fund stock in platinum, it's a cube smaller than 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. So something that you could probably fit in the average Ford F-150 in the back of the cab. Right. Is all the investment metal held for platinum compared to the investment metal held in gold. It's kind of a little bit more mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the secret. It is rare, and therefore it has an innate value. And if you look back 50 years, 45 of those years, platinum traded at a premium to gold, which kind of makes sense. It's just as precious, but it does all these fabulous things in industry. And what we've had with platinum becoming cheaper than gold, part of that was, the asset management industry is that there's been a massive shift. There's been trillions of dollars that have moved from active asset management to passive asset management. And that's been a problem for many people in our space, James. But the interesting thing with that is that gold is in all the commodity indexes. And if you passive asset management, you use indexes. and platinum isn't in those indexes. So when the platinum price was falling below gold, people were saying, why is platinum so undervalued? And what's the problem with platinum? And it really wasn't the case. Dieselgate certainly had something to do with it. But it was that demand for gold was so much higher because of it being in all those indexes and the trillions that moved in asset management. So you've had platinum that for no reason really is undervalued compared to gold. And what heightens it now is this gap with palladium. And that's really where you've got the short-term demand growth.
Oh, by the way, just to reiterate the platinum versus gold, I mean, I've looked at the long-term chart since 1900. I mean, we have recently touched the widest gap that's ever been in terms of price, gold versus platinum. And we're still at a wide gap. I mean, I'll put the chart up so people can see, but it's a real anomaly in terms of, the difference between values currently. And I think the case we're making here is that there is I mean, as someone who studies the market and the fundamental drivers and the potential, it makes sense to allocate a small portion, perhaps of your gold or silver investments into platinum because of just how rare it is.
Absolutely. We saw a lot of investors in gold that when gold got to $2,000 an ounce, they saw that as being a little bit of a plateau, a little bit peaky. And a lot of them switched out of gold into platinum to try and get the benefit of platinum being recognized. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to your investors, James, I mean, simplistically, people are looking around for something that hasn't run. Aluminium has run, cobalt, lithium, copper, nickel, gold, palladium, rhodium, everything's run, platinum hasn't, for no real good reason other than it had no friends for several years when the price continued to go down. Right. So I think looking at the fundamentals certainly helps. And I think the big change that we've had over this very tough period, particularly 2020 with this global pandemic, is that I think the long-term sustainability of Earth really has come into sharp focus. And what that's done, if I go back 2 years ago, the hydrogen economy was almost seen as a bit of a science project. Right now, the certainty of the hydrogen economy is right up there. And the reason is that if you generate what's called green hydrogen, you take renewable power either from wind or solar, and you produce green hydrogen, and you take that green hydrogen, put it into a fuel cell vehicle and drive it, you've got a complete sustainable fuel source that is fossil fuel free. Mm-hmm. And that is really the appeal that it can be done. What that's brought into focus very sharply is that battery electric vehicles aren't really green and they aren't really sustainable. All they do is move the CO2 emissions from the tailpipe to the power station. And if that's a coal-fired power station, you've really got nowhere to go. So the big change is that the discussion around green hydrogen, because today most of the hydrogen that is produced comes from fossil fuels, but sustainably produced green hydrogen means that you can decarbonize. So I think that's why the battery certainly will be part of the powertrain mix, but the fuel cell electric vehicle is part of transport, but hydrogen can also decarbonize heavy industry. And what we believe is the trillions that are going into government stimulation packages around the world will bring the cost of producing hydrogen down from about $4 per kilogram below $2 per kilogram. And when that is the case, then it becomes more attractive than a fossil fuel. So I think that's the big game changer. Platinum's role in that is that it's firstly in producing green hydrogen. You can use platinum in a PEM electrolyzer to convert renewable power, convert water into hydrogen. But that usage is probably only a few 100,000 ounces over 10 years. So not a great change to the supply-demand balance. So people that hear about the importance of platinum come and look at it. The big prize, as I mentioned, is out 10 to 15 years, an extra 2 to 4 million ounces. And that's really doable. And South Africa could expand over that 15-year period with policy certainty. But the other thing is that the heavy-duty trucks, that you just can't build a heavy-duty battery truck. And those right now, in fact, in Switzerland, Hyundai are working where they're using fuel cell trucks to transport groceries, fast-moving consumer goods. Because in Switzerland, there's very high road tax, also very steep roads. Mm-hmm. Batteries tend to discharge, whereas a fuel cell stays at the same power level all along. And they've got, I think, 140 vehicles. They're rolling out 1,400 of these trucks. And they've just completed 1 million kilometers with these fuel cell vehicles on those roads. And the key there is that the project can actually fund the hydrogen refueling station. So for a hydrogen filling station to be viable, you need about 700 fuel cell cars to make it viable, but you only need about 27 trucks. So what these guys are doing is building the hydrogen fueling station as part of the truck project. Once it's up and running, then your cars will follow. And I think that's why you're getting this much increased certainty. And then China, I mean, we opened an office in Shanghai in 2017 to promote an awareness of platinum. Platinum as a jewelry has been in China for 20 years. In fact, when the Chinese platinum jewelry market grew from nothing to nearly 3 million ounces, that was at a price when platinum was $600 an ounce premium to gold when that market grew. So in China, what they're doing is that they had already converted most of their vehicles in their big cities to battery. So, Beijing and Shanghai had terrible air quality. They've now got fleets of trucks and municipal vehicles that are battery. They're converting those from battery to fuel cell, not because they need to, but because in the north of China, it's very cold and battery vehicles just don't operate in the cold weather. And in the north of China, they've got a lot of solar and wind renewable power. So what they're doing is that they're converting every single battery vehicle into a fuel cell vehicle to give their fuel cell industry the critical mass to produce new vehicles for the north of China, because they recognize that battery vehicles, with all of their coal-fired power stations, they just couldn't be sustainable. So the two big changes, the Biden administration rejoining the Paris Climate Accord in the first week and giving a clear commitment to decarbonization. China had never given a date for its decarbonization. And over the last year, they committed to 2060, saying they will emit more carbon, but they committed to 2060. And that's why using hydrogen to decarbonize heavy industry as well as transport has changed the game completely, and particularly for platinum.
Interesting. I didn't know about the fuel cell truck explosion over there in Switzerland and in China. Thank you for that. You did mention about the jewelry. I was surprised when I looked at the fundamental numbers about just how much platinum jewelry is being bought. I would imagine that in Asia, that bid is going to continue because, I mean, let's be honest, everybody in the world knows platinum is rarer than gold, right? I mean, and if you want to differentiate yourself in Asia and you're a high net worth investor or a high net worth person, wearing platinum sometimes, offsets you from people wearing gold. So I would like to hear your experience thus far and why there's perhaps what's the demand like in Asia and what's the future for platinum jewelry?
The interesting thing is that platinum jewelry, as I said, established its foothold in China, and it was for a couple of strange reasons. So Johnson Matthey provided alloy that was used to manufacture platinum jewelry, and they started in the late 80s, actually late 70s, selling a lot more of this platinum alloy into China, and they couldn't quite understand it. And what happened in China is that in order to work with gold in China, you needed a license. And those licenses were pretty tough to come by, but you didn't need a license for platinum. So a lot of artisanal jewelers and small jewelry manufacturers started working in platinum. Johnson Matthey spotted it and started supplying more alloy in. And interestingly, the South African mining companies spotted it and said, well, let's promote platinum in China and see if that accelerates that demand, which they then did. So the combination of those three led to marketing. Now, the fascinating thing is that my experience in the Western world with jewelry is that maybe you'll buy, one really expensive ring that's got a fabulous diamond and a lot of platinum. You won't have a clue what the margin is, and hopefully you only buy one of those in your life. Right. In China, you've got a very different scenario that when you go into a jewelry store, there's a ticker price on the wall, and the piece of platinum that you buy is weighed, and there's a manufacturing charge, and you buy it. Now, those consumers in China, they had brand ambassadors, famous film stars promoting platinum, pure, rare, eternal. And the Chinese consumer, she had money. In fact, during the global economic crisis, she didn't lose her job. And what she was trying to do is differentiate herself from her parents who were old-fashioned and wedded to gold. And she wanted something modern that she could afford. She didn't go on overseas travel, didn't have a car. So as a result, this platinum formed a very important part. But she was buying a piece at $800 an ounce, and then a piece at $900, and then a piece at $1,000. She wasn't investing in platinum. She wasn't going long, but she was aware that this thing that gave her the status with her peers was going up in value. And that's why we saw as the price increased, even with a $600 an ounce premium to platinum, these purchasers were going in and choosing with that very visible difference to go platinum. And that was the marketing that attached platinum to be associated with love. And fascinatingly, we saw it in 9/11, just after 9/11, engagements and weddings went through the roof, and a lot of platinum was sold. And through COVID, people want to give a much more meaningful gift to someone that they love. And platinum is the metal most attached to love. It also happens to be stronger and it wears longer. So the interest in China about platinum isn't that it's rarer, it's that it's acknowledged as being the premium metal. Everybody knows it's much better. And Japan, even more so. Pretty much any man in the street in Japan, their mother and their grandmother got married in a platinum ring. So that longevity, and that's why the platinum bar and coin market in Japan is the most mature and tends to follow price quite accurately. So yeah, interesting jewelry. What happened in China, however, was that as advertising got more expensive and more brands went into China, they competed with platinum jewelry, and the jewelry segment itself came off, and platinum demand did come down. That seems to have bottomed, and you've now got a situation where it's likely that platinum demand growth will occur with a slight increase in price. So platinum jewelry demand certainly looks prospective. And just as the mining companies in South Africa fund us, the World Platinum Investment Council, to increase investment demand, they fund the Platinum Guild International, the PGI, to promote platinum jewelry and increase demand, to give them demand certainty to build more mines.
Well, there's one more question I want to ask Trevor, and if there's anything additional you want to add, feel free. But I wanted to ask about, since the pandemic's hit, we've seen just, the amount of currency creation, and our customer base is really concerned with the amount of fiat currency creation. I mean, the monetary base has essentially doubled in the last few years. You have about a third of all the fiat Federal Reserve note dollars out there that have gone up, in the last year by over a third. So I would imagine that increasingly people are looking around thinking, I need to buy valuable stuff because these currencies are going to start and devaluing away. I mean, you can't expand the currency supply that much and not eventually have some sort of debasement in terms of its purchasing power. So are you seeing in the platinum side a bid for a long-term store of value? I mean, obviously people are going to gold bullion and silver bullion, but I would assume platinum bullion near $1,000 is getting a bid.
Cheap.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds cheap to me, it really does, because 2008 is not that long ago, and it was, $2,300 in 2008. So
I think just on the issue of currencies and the value of a hard asset versus the debasement of currencies, I think that's typically the space of gold, and certainly, gold is referred to more often than not, as a currency rather than a commodity. It's traded by currency desks. And probably because it doesn't kind of work as a commodity, because the amount of above ground stock says that the supply demand balance for gold probably doesn't mean too much. So I think where people are looking to a store of value, they'll tend to look at gold as an alternate to currency. The fact that platinum is so well correlated to the price of gold and is an alternative asset and is a physical asset, all the people concerned about currency that want to use gold as a protection against that concern will equally use platinum as a protection against that concern. And the nice thing is that a lot of people that have never considered gold before, when they try and consider gold as an alternative asset, they really struggle. They struggle with supply demand. What really is the value of gold? So it kind of like, in a way, is really hard to get your head around. Whereas platinum, you can get your head around. Hey, it does something. It's precious. It's got a supply demand balance. Looks like its supply is constrained and demand's going up. That's interesting. And if I then believe it's going to follow gold anyway, I'll get the same diversity as I will with gold. So a lot of investors that really just can't stomach gold step to platinum and say, okay, we can look at platinum as being maybe a good investment, but in terms of currency devaluation, we think it'll perform like gold will, and we're comfortable that gold provides that offset. So it's almost a secondary benefit, but certainly a lot of investors that know and trust gold and are looking to gold as an alternative are putting some of their money into platinum.
Well, Trevor, I really want to thank you for taking the time with us. What way can people follow your research at the World Platinum Investment Council? Where can they find your work?
Sure. Our website is platinuminvestment.com. You can log in. Our investment research is free to anybody who logs in. We target from central banks through institutional investors, private wealth, down to the man in the street. Getting a query from a central bank or a man in the street, we respond in the same way. So we're more than happy to help investors understand that there is enough information to make an informed investment decision and hold their hand along that route. So, whatever you want, you can have a look at what's on our website, and we're certainly here to help. And really appreciate your time and your investors. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for coming on.
If you enjoyed this content, be sure to give our video a thumbs up. To keep getting bullion-related news and industry insights, be sure to subscribe to our channel, finally hit that alert button so you know when we publish fresh content. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what you think and which topics you want to hear more about.